In the busy city of Mumbai, where money is made and lost in seconds, one man came from nowhere and changed India's financial system forever. This is not just a story about stocks or the share market. It's a story about ambition, risk, and the thin line between genius and greed. They called him the Big Bull. To some, he was a visionary, someone with big ideas. To others, he was a villain, someone who cheated the system. So who was this man? How much did he scam? Was it 1,000 Indian rupees crore? How did a man from a simple middle-class background manage to shake India's financial world? What really happened in the famous 1992 financial scam, one of the biggest frauds in Indian history? This is the full story of Harshad Mehta, known as the Big Bull. Let's begin from the start. Humble beginnings, early life and education. Harshad Mehta was born in the mid-1950s to a middle-class Gujarati Jain family in Mumbai. His early life was far from luxurious. When he was still young, the family moved to Raipur, a quieter town, where his father ran a small textile business. Money was tight, but the family managed. Harshad wasn't a top student. He was average in academics and didn't show early signs of genius. He liked cricket, and friends remember him as someone full of confidence and charm, even if he didn't always top the class. After finishing school, he moved back to Mumbai to study commerce at Lala Lajpat Rai College. He graduated in the mid-1970s, a time when India was still under tight economic control. The stock market was like a private club. But after college, life wasn't easy. He worked many small jobs, selling cement, sorting diamonds, but these didn't pay well. Everything changed when he was introduced to the stock market. These jobs paid little, but they taught him how business works, and he started dreaming of a better life. One day, he was introduced to the Bombay Stock Exchange BSE, and that moment changed his life. The first steps into finance. Harshad started working in the finance world as an insurance salesperson. But the real attraction was just around the corner, Dalal Street, home to the Bombay Stock Exchange. In the 1980s, the Indian stock market was like a closed club. It was controlled by a few powerful insiders. Most common people didn't even understand how it worked. Harshad was fascinated by this secretive world. He started working at brokerage firms, someone who helps buy and sell shares for others. This was where he learned the game, how trades worked, how prices moved, how insiders operated. And he started thinking, what if someone could beat the system? The rise of the Big Bull. In the mid-1980s, Harshad set up his own stockbroking firm with his brother Ashwin. He didn't just follow trends, he made them. He started picking undervalued stocks, companies no one paid attention to. He would buy them in huge quantities, then promote them through media and word of mouth. One famous case was a cement company. Its share price jumped from a few hundred to a few thousand rupees. He used a new idea called replacement cost theory to justify the high price. This was innovative at the time. He became very famous. The media called him the Big Bull because he pushed the market up. He lived in luxury, drove expensive cars, lived in a sea-facing flat. He was seen as a symbol of India's economic success. But behind all this glamour, a huge scam was secretly going on. Behind the curtain, how the scam worked. Harshad Mehta's scam was not simple. It was built on something called the Ready for Deal, RF deal, a short-term loan between banks involving government securities. Here's how an RF deal normally worked. 1. Bank A lends money to Bank B. 2. Bank B gives government securities as security guarantee. 3. After a few days, Bank B returns the money and gets its securities back. Harshad acted as a middleman, a broker who arranged these deals, but then he found a loophole. The loophole. He convinced Bank A to give money to Bank B, but instead of sending money directly, the banks routed it through his account. He created fake bank receipts, documents that said securities were transferred, but they weren't. With these fake receipts, he borrowed huge sums. He used this money to buy shares in bulk, pushing prices up. Then he sold them at the peak and made massive profits. This cycle repeated, and no one noticed for a long time. It was like printing money from thin air, and no one noticed for years. The scam explodes. In April 1992, journalist Suchita Dalal published a breaking story in the Times of India. She revealed that Harshad Mehta had illegally taken 500 Indian rupees crores from State Bank of India using fake documents. This opened Pandora's box. Soon, the total fraud was found to be over 4,000 Indian rupees crores, possibly more. The stock market crashed, banks panicked, small investors lost everything. The entire financial system was in shock. Law enforcement acted fast. The CBI raided Harshad's office and home. He and his team were arrested. Over 25 criminal cases were filed. The entire country was glued to the news. The secret RBI warning. There was one critical document that came into the spotlight later. On July 26, 1991, the Reserve Bank of India (RBI) had quietly sent a confidential circular to all banks. It said, "Be careful about routing money in securities. Avoid giving clients, like brokers, too much control." RBI was watching these activities. But this circular was not shared publicly, and Harshad Mehta said he had no idea about it. He later argued, "I didn't invent this system. I only used what was already there, just better than others." This raised serious questions. If RBI knew, why didn't it act sooner? Was it just Harshad or a systemic failure? A prime minister's call. In an unexpected twist, Harshad Mehta once met the Prime Minister of India P.V. Narasimha Rao in November 1991. India was facing a huge economic crisis. Foreign exchange reserves were so low the country could pay for only 7 days of imports. The PM wanted to push economic reforms, but needed the stock market to show confidence. So he asked Harshad Mehta to help create a positive stock market environment. Harshad agreed. He even donated 1 Indian rupee crore to the PM's election fund, 67 Indian rupees lakhs during the meeting, and 33 Indian rupees lakhs later. The PM later won his election, and the reforms changed India's future. But Harshad's role in that meeting remained controversial. The fall and the legal battle, although many others were involved, bankers, politicians, and officials, Harshad Mehta became the main target. He always said, "I didn't cheat. I just used loopholes that everyone knew about." He was in jail for 111 days, then got bail. But his financial empire collapsed. Over the years, he said he had paid huge bribes to politicians for protection. These claims caused controversy but were never proven. He kept facing legal cases. On June 4, 1992, his offices and home were raided. The CBI arrested him and many others. In total, 25 cases were filed, but only 4 banks or public companies filed official complaints. The rest of the cases had no formal FIRs. On the last day of 2001, while in jail custody, he died of a heart attack at the age of 47. Harshad Mehta didn't scam 100 Indian rupees crore, not 1,000 Indian rupees crore. He scammed a jaw-dropping 4,000 Indian rupees crore in the early 90s. In today's money, that would be equivalent to 30,000 Indian rupees to 40,000 Indian rupees crore or more. One man, one loophole, and a scam that shook the nation. However, the scam prompted sweeping reforms in India's financial system, strengthening the securities market regulators' powers, computerizing stock trading to replace outdated systems, overhauling banking regulations on interbank transactions and document verification, introducing dematerialized shares to prevent forgery. His story remains contentious. Some view him as a visionary who exposed systemic flaws. Others see him as a fraudster who manipulated the system for personal gain. His story changed the way India's markets work, making them stronger, safer, and more modern. 3 decades later, we still ask, was it fraud or foresight ahead of its time? That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. See you in the next video.